lost in dreams of yesterday. You came to me, you loved my night away.
Wow, incredible.
Thank
Like
you.
always, I've heard this melody many, many times.
Thank you. Well, that's the song that I wrote. It's about the documentary and the book, actually, Elvis, Rocky, and Me. The night that Elvis passed away, I came and I wrote that it's almost like he was there with me, because there are chords in that I have never used before. And both very famous composers that have heard it have said, Carol, where did you come up with that? Where did you come up with those chords? And I sometimes think that maybe I was channeling him as I wrote it.
Wow. Well, today I'm here with, I like to call her my Auntie Carol Connors.
An aunt.
She's my family here. We're
you.
in her Beverly Hills home, and I'm here today because I find her to be one of the most funniest, interesting, accomplished individuals that you will ever meet. And I wanted to share a little bit about her with anyone who watches this video.
Well, thank you. Thank
you. Where do we start? I mean, Elvis Presley was your first boyfriend. You co-wrote Gonna Fly Now for the film Rocky.
Ba, 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 ba.
I mean, you also were in the Teddy Bears with Phil Spector and Marshall. I mean, you were like literally like in the who's who. Like,
well, Phil Spector wrote "To Know Him Is to Love Him" for my voice. To know him.
Which went #1
yes,
global.
It was global.
Correct.
And it was at that time, according to Martin Scorsese, who is an incredible music buff and one of our greatest directors. He said that he considers it to be one of the most important rock and roll songs of all rock and roll songs. One, because it was the first thing Phil Spector ever did, who went on to become the genius of rock and roll music, the Wallace Sound, and because it was a very, as Talia Shire said from Rocky, she said, Carol, you're Rocky. She said, you were the age of innocence. Your voice was so innocent. Well, I was 16 and a half years of age.
Wow, incredible.
I was going into college, into high school.
Wow, that's just incredible. I mean, I know the story, but I'm going to get more into it in a few minutes here. And you were also in the O.J. Simpson trial. You were with him at a charity event a day before the murder.
I was at Diana Ellis's event the night before at her estate, and I was these little ladies, I should say little, my father was a jockey, I'm not exactly 6'2", but these little ladies asked, they was just all a Twitter, and they said, oh, I know you know OJ, can we get a picture with him? And I went up to OJ because I had known him for years. He and Nicole owned Abyssinian kitty cats like I own. And I said, OJ, may I get a picture? And that was the one picture. There were only 3 pictures that sold that night, taken with OJ, and I was in one of them.
Wow.
And I watched him. He was with Paula Barbiera. She was from Florida, and he was with her, and it was really quite romantic what I was watching. And then I spoke with him for a while, and the next day, Nicole and Ron Goldman were murdered.
Wow, that's just...
And I had to testify.
Talk about history.
I had to testify. I was what's known as they call it a demeanor witness, because I was there the night before and because of the photograph that was taken.
That makes sense. I mean,
it was scary. I was petrified. I've never been really in a courtroom before. And Judge Ito actually stopped the proceedings to talk about Rocky. If you go back and look at the trial, you will see that. We get, oh, you were nominated for an Oscar for Rocky. Yeah. And I mean, I thought to myself, is this like surreal?
He stopped the whole situation for your accomplishment with Rocky.
Yeah. But, wow. At first I didn't think that OJ was guilty. It was very difficult for me. And then, of course, DNA was very new at that time. Mm-hmm. And as it progressed, the trial, I changed my mind, but it was very hard for me to wrap my head around that, because he had always been so sweet to me, and and so was Nicole, and very
Wow.
tragic.
Very tragic, but we're here to talk today about, you were also in the most notable, the most exclusive parties of Hollywood. You're friends with Hugh Hefner, and you attended these parties. Let's get into that shortly. First, I want to talk about um, Elvis, Rocky, and Me.
Yes.
Clearly, Elvis was one of the,
Elvis, Rocky, and Me.
which I have a book as well. It recently
It's
came
my
out.
memoir.
Okay. Uh, Since you had the honor of knowing Elvis Presley, tell us a little bit about him, and how did you and Elvis meet? How did this start?
Um, well, before I tell you that's part of the story, the song that I just sang, which was the tribute to the way that we were towards each other, because he really was my very, very first boyfriend, is called "You Loved My Night Away." But I met Elvis because he fell. The key to everything for me seems to be to know him is to love him, because I sang it. Elvis fell in love with my voice. He didn't know me.
Okay.
He did not know me, but he said to the Memphis Mafia, those were the guys that were always around Elvis. He said, "Oh, I really like that girl's voice. I really like to meet her." I like to imitate people, as I
Yeah.
can even imitate my cats and my dolphins, whatever. So he said that, and this guy came up to me in a market, which was sort of on the fringe of the Memphis Mafia, and he said, "Aren't you the girl that sang 'To Know Him Is to Love Him'?" And I went, "Yes." And he said, "Well, Elvis Presley would love to meet you." And I went, "Oh, right, of course, sure." And he said, "No, no, no, really." So I gave him my phone number. And in those days, you didn't do things like that. And I gave him my number. And sure enough, 2 weeks later, he called and the phone rang. And my mother answered the phone. And she says, my real name's Annette. And she said, "Annetella, there's someone on the phone that wants to talk to you about Elvis Presley."
Oh my God.
And I was taken to his house. Now, my father had been a jockey, so he lived on the edge. But for me to say, okay, I never met the guy before, except when I was buying a carton of milk in the in the grocery store. I went.
Wow.
And the first words, there was Elvis across the room. You had to walk down these stairs. It was on Bellagio. They had rented the house. And I was on the other side of the room. And then all of a sudden, it was like looking at this beautiful cat. His movements were so fluid. He was just beautiful. So he came up to me. I felt like a mouse. He came up to me and he said, first words, "So, why'd you name the group Teddy Bears?" And I didn't know what to say. And I looked at him and I just went, "That is Elvis Presley." And I said, "Just want to be your teddy bear." And that started our love affair.
Wow.
And I went with him for 9 months. I didn't have a baby because I was too stupid. But he was my very, very, very first boyfriend. Ladies, you know what I mean. My very, very first love.
We all know what you mean.
Well, they know what I mean for sure.
Wow. And can you talk to us a little bit about how was he? I mean, you knew him at a personal level, not everyone else.
I knew him in the biblical sense, as they say. He was a Southern gentleman. He was very sweet. He was very kind. He thought I had a wonderful sense of humor, which he loved, and he had a beautiful laugh. He didn't drink anything but water at that time, and he tapped his foot a lot and his hand. I believe that that people did not realize what a consummate musician he was until after he passed away.
Wow.
And if he would have done A Star Is Born, which he was offered, but Colonel Parker and Barbra Streisand did not get along, and they turned down the film. And I was told that the dialogue, in fact, it's in the biopic that Baz Luhrmann did on Elvis. But I was told that this is what Colonel Parker said. My boy ain't gonna play no second fiddle to no Barbara Streisand and end up a drunk. And I think I've always believed, and I've said this in interviews, and I'm doing your interview now, but I have said this before in print. I do believe that if he would have done A Star Is Born, he would have lived. He so wanted to be respected as an actor. He loved Jimmy Dean, but the irony is that he would have been up against us. The year that Rocky won everything was the year that A Star Is Born was up against us.
Wow.
And they were losing to us. Is that ironic?
Talk about
that
a coincidence.
Of all, because I believe, and so does Talia Shire, and so does Diane Warren, who is, I call her the GOAT, because she's such a great female songwriter. But I believe, and they believe, that if he would have done A Star Is Born, he would have been up for an Oscar. I don't know if he would have won it, but he would have gotten nominated.
Okay. I have a question. I've never asked you this. Do you have anything material that he gifted you while you were dating him? And do you still have that?
I have some personal things. Let's just leave it at that. Okay.
I've never asked you that, and
I know,
it
and
just literally came to me as I was, listening to you. I was like, "What's
But
something I've never asked her?"
But I also have an enormous. Luckily, I remember everything, and when I'm telling you how it is, I'm actually seeing the situation. So my memories of the time that I spent with Elvis are very, very vivid.
Wow.
Still to this day.
Well, it's Elvis Presley, what could we say? And it's Carol Connors,
Well, thank you.
Both of you guys at the time, for the superstars.
Well, I met him, he had not married Priscilla.
Okay.
I met him as he was meeting Priscilla. He had just come out of the Army. But when he was in the Army, To Know Him Is to Love Him was the #1 record in Germany.
Exactly.
Is that coincidental? So maybe I never asked him this. I wonder if the reason he loved To Know Him so much and my voice and the innocence of Priscilla, if there was sort of a full circle about that.
Yeah.
Because it was one of his favorite songs. And I met him in '64. And he had just finished Viva Las Vegas with Anne Margaret. And I to this day believe that Anne Margaret was one of the great loves of his life. I did ask him that question once. He never answered it.
Mm. Well, let's switch it up a little bit.
Okay.
Let's talk about Rocky now.
Ba 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 ba, gonna fly now. Okay, fine. Now I have to be in my Yo Rocky mood.
Listen, it's one of the most, if not the most iconic, films ever produced, and to be a part of that is such a big deal. And how did you end up becoming one of, a part of this film? How did this transpire?
Bill Conti, Ann Robbins, and myself had the same agent, and we were told that there was a little film about a boxer. So we went to a screening room. It's called a rough cut, which means if I were to throw a punch, nobody would hear it. That comes later.
Mm-hmm.
So none of it, that's in sound effects. So we're in the screening room, and it had a song. And the song went like this. He's got a Sunday punch that will put you into Monday. And I said to Bill Conti, I said, why are we here? That's not bad. And Bill said to me, shut up, Carol. Dionne Warwick also said that to me on another song, but whatever. So we're sitting there and the film ends, and this little man stands up. And he was friends with the director, John Avildsen. And he said, and he had a very soft spoken. And he said, John, you have a wonderful film here. John, you have a great film here. John, and his voice is getting higher and higher. He said, you're going to be nominated for Best Director for this film. John, this film is going to win the Oscar if you do one little thing. And Stallone and Sasha, his wife, and Robert Chardoff and Erwin Winkler and everybody, and and Carl Weathers, and we're all sitting there and we're going, what? And the little man said, get rid of that fucking song. Excuse the expression, but those were his exact words. And we got the gig.
Wow.
As we call it in the industry. And I went home, they all came to my house, and Bill sat down at my piano and played those notes a little bit more than I'm doing at this angle. And I said, what is anybody going to write to that? And they all left. And I went into the shower. And in those days, it's not like a cell phone. In those days, you could carry your, through, it was landlocked.
Okay.
And I called Bill and I said, Bill, I know what the film's about. I know what life's about. I know what the song's about. Because the film was running through my head, and I could see him pounding the meat and eating the egg yolks, drinking the egg yolks, and running through Philadelphia and climbing up the steps and standing there and going in slow motion. And Bill said to me, where are you? And I went, I'm in the shower. And he said, are you with somebody? I said, Bill, I'm a Scorpio. If I was with somebody, would I be calling you? And he said to me, Carol, give me the line before you electrocute yourself. And the line was, gonna fly now. Because when John Avildsen, the director who won the Oscar, put him into slow motion, standing on top, he could do anything any of us put our minds to doing. He could go the distance, he could win, he could even fly. Hence came Gonna Fly Now. And in Rocky 1, he did not win. He went the distance, but he didn't win. But he did win because he went the distance.
Exactly. So that's the message behind the lyrics.
That's the message behind life. Go the distance.
Go the distance.
Believe in what you believe in and go for it.
Yeah.
Because that's I believe you have to have laser beam clarity on what you want. And I did an article once for People magazine about the success of Rocky and me and all that stuff. Thank you very much. And I said to them, if you don't eat it, sleep it, think it, drink it, need it, forget it.
I love
it
that.
It takes laser beam clarity. The key to becoming, whatever the word, happiness, success, and being happy means that in this moment now, I am happy because I am happy in the moment I am in. I'm not thinking about anything else unless what you're asking me, I'm answering. But I am happy that I'm here. And I think that if more people would be into the moment, they would find the elusive happiness.
Instead of focusing on other things that are not even there yet. You're right.
Right.
I love that. I've never heard of that.
I never said it before. Quite like that.
And with that project, clearly you had to work with Sylvester Stallone. How was it working with Stallone at the time before he was this big shot,
Well, I adore Sly. I mean, he was great. Hey, yo, girl. That's how he talks. I mean, it's because of him that I made $500 up front on Rocky. Bill Conti made $2,000. The entire music budget was $18,000. But on the back end, I bought my house in Beverly Hills.
There you go.
It's called passive income. Thank you, Sly. Thank you, Bill Conti. Thank you, Rocky.
Wow, that's a great little summary. I think that summarizes. There's a lot more to it, but I love the summary and how we're going. And let's move on to something else now.
What?
Hollywood.
Hooray for Hollywood. That I did not write. Wish I would have, but I didn't.
I mean, I feel like Hollywood is such a big deal, like nationwide, worldwide. everyone just talks about Hollywood. But that's what you see every day on TV, on social media, whatever. But I feel like you got to experience Hollywood at its prime. I feel at its best with the Playboy Mansion parties, with just that era was just so different from nowadays. I feel, and I think you got to experience the good of it.
Well, I don't want to call it the golden years of Hollywood because I think that was even before me, but it was different. And I never called Hugh Hefner Hugh Hefner. He was because he became a really good friend. His name was Hef. That was if you and Barbie Benton's my best friend, and she was Hef once said to me that these were his exact words because I have never ever forgotten them. Being a lyricist and a composer, I don't forget things, words and music. And he said, Carol, Barbie was the singularly most intense romantic relationship of my life. And so, I mean, I've been very intertwined. There's a synergism there. I had a great friendship with Hef. He totally respected me, and I respected him. And Barbie became my dearest friend, and we're still friends.
So you met him because of Barbie?
Hmm.
Okay, Barbie was his girlfriend.
Well, no, they had broken up,
Okay.
but they were sort of whatever. I mean, when he wanted to marry her, she didn't want to marry him. When she wanted to marry him, he didn't want to marry her. But I met him because of Barbie. Yes, he wanted us to meet because she's a wonderful talent. She's not only visual; she has great visuality, but she's also very audio, and she sings and she writes. I mean, she wrote one of the funniest songs. Diane Warren and I think it's the funniest song of all time, called Bald Men. It is the cutest thing you have ever heard. And she wrote it by herself. She's very talented.
Wow, wow. And I mean, I think that this is kind of why I wanted to do this actual interview. I wanted to learn more about your experiences at these parties that he threw, just because I mean they're just so iconic. I mean you have people dressing up as Hugh Hefner for Halloween. Till this day, it's like a very
Pajamas and a pipe.
exactly, like it's just iconic. And I mean you see it at the Halloween stores everywhere. And I mean so this is a big deal. Like, talk to us about those parties. Talk to us about what transpired in there. What was the process like to get into them? What did you see? Is there anything in the back end that you knew of that others didn't? Because you were actually, you know what? Talk to us about the time that Hugh Hefner wanted you to go to the party, but you would not go unless
Oh,
you had that plus one.
I was after Rocky when my whole life changed. There was before Rocky, BR and AR. In fact, I remember when I lived in this town. I didn't live in Beverly Hills, but I lived in this area. And I would go to the Polo Lounge. I would be like Carol, or they'd be very nice to me. But the day I got nominated for my first Oscar, because I also did Walt Disney's All the Music and Lyrics to the Rescuers, but the day after I got nominated and I went into the Polo Lounge, I became Miss Connors overnight. That's Hollywood. That's this town. But with Hef, I got a call from his private secretary named Mary Connors, of all things. And she said, is this Carol Connors? And I said, yes. She said, well, Mr. Hefner would like to invite you to the Midsummer's Night Dream Party. And I was like, oh my God, go to the Playboy Mansion? I've always wanted to do that. And because it's sort of, a dream that people have when you live out here, and when you live anywhere.
Oh yeah.
And she said, but one of the rules is that you can't bring anyone. And there was like in film, we call it a pregnant pause. And I said, and I thought like that. And I went, Miss Connors, her name was my name. I said, I would love to come to the Playboy Mansion It's been a dream of mine all my life. I said, but I have to refuse. I said, I will not go anywhere unescorted. And she said, there was a pregnant pause on her
On
side.
her side.
And she said, let me get back to you. And I said, okay. And about an hour and a half went by, and the phone rang, and it was Miss Connors. And she said, I just spoke with Mr. Heffner, and he said he would love you to come up to the mansion. Would you please just give us the name of your date?
Wow.
And it's like I was not about to go up there just as one of the girls. I mean, I wanted to command the respect that I was hoping I would get, and which I did get. And the parties were wonderful. I mean, for me, they were astounding. The Midsummer's Night Dream and the Easter egg hunt. And Robert Culp and I, he was my boyfriend from I Spy. We would go up there. I met him up there, and we ended up going together. And I would put all his eggs in my basket. And Hef said, you can't do that. And I got caught. in front of Hef, in front of everybody. Hef said, Carol, did Robert give you all those 4,322 eggs? Not that many. But, some of them were up high, and I'm only 5
What did
feet
they
tall.
have?
They're the most beautiful eggs. They were all hand-painted.
Oh, so they were
I
special.
still have some.
I've seen them.
Yeah, I know, but my kitty cats rolled a bunch of them down the stairs
Oh, no.
as they ruined everything else in the house. But and I was caught, and I went, yes, he did. They're in my basket.
Oh, wow.
And I got caught for cheating. Oh, it was awful.
Oh my
It
God!
was
So they were
awful.
just hand painted. There was nothing in there. Just
They were hand painted Easter eggs.
Wow.
And he was so sweet to me. He knew that I was like in tears. And Robert was so upset for me. And Hef signed some eggs. He didn't like to put a signature on a lot of things.
Oh wow!
But I have a signature on a couple of the eggs that the cats didn't destroy. Thank God.
Oh wow! I might have to see one of those. And I also know that like he did a Playboy spread for you as well.
Oh yeah.
And for you, why did he do it for you? And how was the experience?
I was by Robert and I were there, and we were by the pool, and I was in a bikini, and Robert and Hef were like in the corner talking, and they both came up to me together, and Hef said, I really want to do a Playboy layout with you. And I went, what? And he said, I really want to do a Playboy. I know exactly what I wanted to say. And I'm going to send you to Mexico with Robert for a week to get a tan because I have green eyes. And at that time I had dark hair.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because Priscilla has the same color combination. And he said, I'm going to send you, and it's going to be called And She Writes Songs ... 2. Okay, that was the title of the layout.
Yeah.
So we went to Mexico, and I got this glorious tan, and my eyes were going, and they assigned the #1 photographer at the time, Mario Caselli. And we shot for like 4 days right before I started peeling. You always peel from a tan, but I was still cool. And the pictures, they were incredible. And at first, you're like this. And then all of a sudden, you're like this. As the days went by, it was like, okay.
It got easier.
And I was on top of the piano, under the piano, and next to the piano.
And you're a Scorpio.
And I'm a Scorpio. Came down to the last, there were 2 pictures. 2 pictures. And Hef and I could not agree. And he never did this with other people. We could not agree on 1 picture. And I never let the Playboy, he never ran it. He was a man of his word. He said that if we could not come to terms with the dialogue and the pictures, he would give me all the pictures, which he did. They were slides in those days. He gave me all the pictures, and he was a man of his word. To this day, I wish I would have done it. I really do. But in those days, I just could see my father going to his poker games on Wednesday night, and one of his buddies pulling up a Playboy magazine and going, "Isn't this your daughter?" And I just, and it was one of the pictures was lovely, and the other one, because I said, as you do the shoot, you become more, you're not inhibited. You just become uninhibited. So one of them was a little over the edge, but I have them all upstairs. So years later, when I lived on Palm Drive, my nephew was at the house. Okay, I had a nephew. I have a nephew, thank God. And Zachary was very quiet. And I had this back bedroom where this whole box of these slides were. And I went, I wonder where he is and why he's so quiet. And I walked into the room, and there was my nephew. He must have been about 10 or 11, looking at these pictures. And I'm standing over him like, I'm not that tall, but in that moment I was probably like a giant. And I said, "Zachary." And he looked up. I'll never forget this. And he went, "Auntie Carol, you're gorgeous."
Oh my God.
I think on that note, we may end this.
Well, that was a lot of details and very, very, very good information.
Thank you.
And I know you've met so many people, and there's a picture that I love that you're with some ladies and Elizabeth Taylor.
Yes.
And I love the message behind that picture.
It's Raquel Welch, if it's the one I'm thinking of, Elizabeth Taylor, me, and probably the most important lady in the picture, which was Madame Sadat, Anwar Sadat's widow, who was assassinated, during the Egyptian, he was the premier. And it was at a dinner which I went to, and I sang the national anthem. And the picture was taken of the four of us. And it's a very bizarre picture because I'm in this beautiful Guy Rex blue gown, and they're all in black. So your eyes automatically go to color. You can't help yourself. It's just the way we're built. And there I am, and there are they, and Elizabeth and Raquel, the two divas, were, if you see the picture, they are both staring in different directions. They refuse to look at each other. And then there's Madame Sadat and me, know. And people thought that I looked like, at that time, Elizabeth's daughter. I didn't, but people thought that. And it was quite an evening, and I got to sing the national anthem.
Wow.
Our anthem. And then they had a beautiful, what's her name again? She sang the Israeli national anthem.
Wow. Well, I mean, I think that I hit on all the spots that I wanted to ask as far as questions. There's just a lot more. There's not enough time to even go over everything, but I think we hit all the interesting facts that I wanted to speak of. Is there anything you could think of that would be interesting for your everyday people that don't experience this life about Hugh's parties at his home? Heff's parties at his home. Something you could just
They were very magical. They were beautiful. The times that I went, I was in some very exquisite Jean Harlow type, because the Midsummer's Night Dream Party, you were in sleepwear, but very romantic and glamorous looking. And the Halloween, I don't remember what I went as. I think I went as a belly dancer on one of them. I think that was my favorite because he would do, and he loved, making the mansion become the part of whatever the event was. Like at Halloween, he had coffins and ghouls, and he had pumpkins, and it was like really eerie, and and like things coming out of the coffin, and then there was what do you call that? Not steam, but
Fog.
fog. Yeah. So you would walk in, and you would almost feel like maybe this was where
You got
Dracula.
transported.
Yeah, transported. Good choice of words. You should be a lyricist. Transported into another time, and Dracula. It was quite wonderful. It was wonderful.
And I know
must
you were
admit.
like a VIP, but what about the other ladies? What was the process for them to get in? How did men get in, and how did women get
Well,
into these parties?
well, a lot of them were the Playboy. They were the girls that were on the covers, that were the centerfolds, that were bunnies. So there were, and there were a lot of celebrities. I mean, from Clint Eastwood to who I've always had a crush on, to tons and tons of people. So, and everybody got along, and the food was exquisite. I mean, it was really very special. It was something that. That I was blessed to be
To
able
be a
to be
part of?
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that's it for today. We could wrap it up. I think we had a lot of fun. Do you want to play us a little something to
No, I
end?
want to do a dolphin call
Do a dolphin call.
instead of, because I already played the piano.
You did.
The 88s. Okay, I can sound like a dolphin. Everybody tries to imitate me, including Barbie, but nobody can. Here goes. I have to think dolphin. Even the dolphins are saying thank you for interviewing me.
Well, thank you. This was my Auntie Carol Connor.